Welcome back to the KIX 96.5 Morning Show. Chart-topping country star David Nail. He's back with a brand new EP called Best of Me. He's currently out on his summer tour, and you can see him tomorrow night, Thursday night, at the Pub Station in Billings, Montana. Go check out thepubstation.com to get your tickets. The man behind the hits Red Light, Let It Rain, Whatever She's Got, and his brand new single, Best of Me. We're excited to have David Nail on the phone. First, David, thanks so much for coming on.
Absolutely, man. Thank you for that intro, man. I'm ready to go. I'm ready for the show to start.
Well, what a summer you've had. You performed at the Opry. Randy Travis came out on stage in Texas. You went to the CMA Fest. You released an EP. And now you're in Montana, David. I mean, are you pinching yourself? How's this summer been?
Well, it's been wild. You know, I think since everything shut down, this has been the first year where things have felt pretty normal for the most part. And we've been on the road, you know, obviously as much as we possibly can, and it's been a good amount of time out on the road and some great shows, and it's been a while since we've been to Montana, so we're excited to be back and excited to be in Billings. Yeah.
Well, you grew up in Missouri. Your dad was a high school band director, so was music always around? Were you destined to be an artist?
I don't know about destined. I mean, I was, you know, I definitely had a lot of music around the house. And then, you know, when I was in high school in the late 90s, that's sort of when I guess country music just kind of boomed. And it was, you know, the biggest genre really, I think, for about a decade there. And very familiar, feels very familiar to what it did, you know, what it does now, you know, with all these young stars and stuff, you know, kind of blowing up, so to speak. And,
yeah.
But it was, I just kind of fell in love with the genre, and I always played sports all my life, and there was a long part of my life where I thought that was kind of the career that I would choose, and then eventually realized the major leagues weren't coming to Kennett, Missouri to look for the next Ken Griffey Jr. So I thought maybe music was a little bit better of an idea, and I moved to Nashville after high school, and then again after a couple years down the road after college, and been there ever since. And it's just, you know, as cliche as it sounds, it's been a dream come true.
Yeah, you've had, just like your typical country star, it's been up and down. O2 Mercury came out. So, I mean, you just kind of mentioned it. You went to Nashville after high school, and then did you go to college? Was that before Mercury, after? What was the timeline?
Well, I went to play junior college baseball at a school, you know, in Nashville, and sort of kind of getting my feet wet. And, you know, coming from a small town, I was extremely overwhelmed, and you know, Mom wasn't there to iron my clothes and fix my cereal every morning, and so I had to retreat very quickly back to Missouri. And then, you know, a couple years down the road, when I was a little older and a little bit more mature, I moved back and got a record deal pretty quickly, and just as quickly it kind of disappeared. And so my mid-20s were really spent just kind of doing a lot of reflecting, trying to figure out, was this something that I could, you know, still pursue? You know, when I was early on in my career, I was very obsessed with doing things very early and being young, and I always tell people that's why I dropped out of college 2 or 3 times. But in reality, before I had any success, hell, I could have been a doctor if I was smart enough.
Yeah.
Obviously wasn't. That's why I'm not a doctor. It was kind of a wild ride in the 20s, but really coinciding when I got married in 2009, things kind of started to pick up, and been fortunate enough to be in the business in one way, shape, or form ever since. To be out on the road and touring all over the place, and been fortunate enough to play in every state multiple times. And like I said earlier, just really excited to, you know, Montana is like the trendy place to be these days because of that, you know, that TV show that's on.
Yeah.
So I'm just like everybody else. I'm like a tourist. I'm walking around, you know, searching for my cowboy hat, ready to get my Yellowstone on. So I'm super excited to be back.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's crazy looking at your career because, well, your first album didn't even come out, and then you signed again. You came out with a new album, I'm About to Come Alive. You have all these crazy songs. You recorded a song with Train. You did a Kenny Chesney song. You did all these songs that you would think would be a home run that really weren't, and then you release Let It Rain, and it skyrockets to number 1.
Yeah, you know, I mean, I think that's one of the things that I learned very quickly is there's no recipe for success.
No.
There's no book you can read that can sort of prepare you, and a lot of times the songs you think are no-brainers are the ones that take the longest to kind of get up there. You know, I mean, I felt like Red Light was a huge hit, and it was for us, but it took all of about a year to get up to I think 6 or 7 wherever it peaked, and a lot of record labels would have given up on a song way before 30 weeks, much less 52 weeks. So I was just fortunate enough to have a record label that believed in me, and we were going to try to figure out how to make it work, and we were going to try to find a song. And like you said, the first song I released was a song that Train recorded, and a song that I still love to this day, still perform every once in a while. But for whatever reason, it didn't work, and we went back in the studio and we cut Red Light. And like I said, it took about a year. But Red Light, I mean, I think that even though it wasn't a number one, it's as big a hit as I've ever had, and a song that really kind of put me on the map. And I think it's as recognizable now when we play live as any of the songs I've ever had.
Yeah, well, I think you got like 12 or 13 million views on YouTube for Red Light. So it's still holding up very well. Go check him out. David Nail. He's at davidnail.com. He's on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. He's everywhere. Go to YouTube. Check out all of his catalog. Best of Me, his latest EP, is out now. You have a roller coaster ride. Your record label drops you. You do David Nail and the Well Ravens, and it re-energizes you. One of my friends that I talked to, that I told yesterday I was going to have you on the show, they said, "Oh, is he the guy that does The Gun?" I love that song.
Oh wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I've never heard anybody comment on that song. So God bless your friend. Yeah, it was something that, I think a lot of people, and I worried about this, I worried about people kind of sort of thinking that I was having a midlife crisis, but did that with some guys that I'd worked with for a long time, and it was very organic, and it was so much fun, and it was sort of just like, let's go in the studio and let's just see what happens. And so, like I said, it was very natural. It wasn't forced. And then we spent so much time and energy on it, it was like, well, I don't want this to just be something that nobody ever hears. And so we released that, and I've sort of been doing the EP thing since, which really fits my personality the best. I think so many times when you make a record, you do it over the course of 6 months to a year, and my ADD is all over the place. And so when you're recording a song and then 6 months later record another song, well, a lot of times you're just in two different headspaces.
Yeah.
And so it's really hard to make a record like that. Sometimes the records can kind of seem to be all over the place. And so the EP is much more natural for me, and it fits my personality a lot better. And sort of been doing that ever since. And it's just fit really well. And I think, we've done some things that maybe push the envelope a little bit, and some stuff that I feel like people kind of expected from me, and at the same time just trying to stay true to myself and record music that energizes me and that I'm enthusiastic about, and just stay out on the road and work enough to remind people that we're still out there doing it.
Yeah. Well, tell us about your songwriting, because listening to your songs, David, it's very emotional. You have a little different twist on your writing style. I don't know what the heck it is, but it's personal. It's emotional. What is it? Is it hard to write a song? How long does it take you to write a song? Because I don't know. It's just you're tugging at everything in your music, which is amazing.
Well, thank you. It's something that I would say 90% of the songs that I write are, for the most part, very, very much something that I lived, or a story from my past, or something that I identify with, and just for whatever reason just sort of fell out. With Best of Me, it was a song that about a conversation that I had with my father-in-law, 14 years prior. And a lot of times I don't think you write songs about something that's so dated, but it fell out one night about 9 o'clock at night, and I remember my wife was in the bathtub, and I ran there, and I was like, I have no clue where this is coming from or why I'm suddenly writing about this, but what do you think? And I remember even she was sort of taken back by the randomness of the moment, and which sort of caused me to question, whether or not the song was very good. But my wife's long been not impressed with what I do, so I should be used to that. I've just, I just try to write about real life, and I feel like that the people that have been fans of my music, they kind of know when they hear a song that's most likely something that I've been through, or something that's weighed on me and that was personal to me, and I think they appreciate that. And I've even the songs that I don't write that I've recorded over time, are songs that I identified with something in the story, or it moved me and reminded me of something from my past or a past relationship or where I grew up. And so I think I just, I think a lot of times we underestimate the intelligence level of the listener. And, if I go out there and I sing about something that I haven't lived or is not personal to me, I think they definitely will see right through that and go, what in the hell is David doing? So I've tried to just stay true to myself. And, I've been in this business in one way, shape, or form for about 20 years. So it's obviously you can always have more success, but for the most part, I've been able to provide for my family and be in this business for that long, and it's something I'm very grateful for. And so I really hesitate to mess with the formula too much.
Well, it's working. And if you go to YouTube, he's got a Best of Me series that there's, I think, 7 clips of you and Catherine, your wife, sitting there talking about old stories. I love the story where you're talking about your in-laws that you want to marry their daughter, and they never really say yes.
Yeah, it was sort of like a series of comments that sort of added up to yes, but there was never an actual yes said. And I literally walked out the door and was just like, okay, well, I've got to go buy a ring now. And then I bought a ring, and then 6 hours later proposed to her. And so everything about our relationship happened very fast. We met, we were living together within about 2.5 months, which was very frowned upon in the South, and
yeah,
especially a girl who went to Ole Miss, who just has a little bit different expectations and philosophies on marriage and different things like that. But there's really no formula when it comes to that, and we sort of were just flying by the seat of our pants, and we were crazy, and we were young, and we were, as cheesy as it sounds, we were super in love, and we were just kind of willing to do and try whatever. And so we moved in together, and then 6 months later we were engaged, and then we were married within about 13 months from the day we met. So everything we did was sort of sped up from probably most people, but we've been married for over 14 years now, so we must have done, and it obviously hadn't been always, peaches and cream by any means. But I think that's what keeps it interesting. And when you look back on some of the struggles we've had, or, whether or not I was having children or just trying to find some success in this business, I think that's what obviously, keeps you strong and makes you stronger. And we've definitely had plenty of those obstacles that have, sort of had us come out on the other side with a little bit better outlook than maybe we had previously.
Yeah, for sure. 14 years of marriage, 3 kids, but she still looks at you with love in her eyes when you're watching the Best of Me series, so that's good.
Well, thank you. It beats the alternative, I guess.
Exactly. She's not glaring at you. She's not burning a hole through you, David. So, and she's aged well. She's holding.
She hadn't aged at all. I just talked to her before I called you, and every day I look at her and I'm like, why do you still look like you're 26 and I look like I'm 44?
Yeah,
it's not fair.
It is definitely not fair. No, I hear you on that. The depression, you fought depression for quite a bit before COVID. How were things when COVID hit? Because, we were all fighting it over COVID.
Well, I think it was something that was up and down. I was one of the people who were very naive about everything. I sort of was like, oh, well, in a couple of weeks, it'll be back to normal. In a couple of weeks, it'll be back to normal. And, it was 2 years, I think, before things really felt like they were headed back to somewhat normal. And so it was up and down. I was in denial, I think, about it for a long time, and I was trying to convince myself that things really weren't as bad. It wasn't quite as gloom and doom as maybe everybody was pretending it to be or saying that it was. And then you'd wake up one day and you'd be like, wow, this really sucks. This is a real thing, and this is really affecting not only my business and my career, but that affects my personal life at home and how I provide for my family. And so it really was a sort of a battle of just trying to stay as sane as you possibly could and just kind of keep the faith that everything happens for a reason. And I don't know that I necessarily figured out what in the heck the reason was for that, but, I definitely think if there was one thing that I got out of it was being able to be home for those 2 years with my kids. They really don't remember how busy I was prior to COVID.
Yeah.
And so it was an adjustment sort of going back out on the road when they were 5, 6, 7 years old now, because I think they kind of thought, well, our dad doesn't really do anything. He just sits at home all day. So
he might play the guitar once in a while, but he just hangs out.
he just goes in that office and plays guitar for an hour or so at a time, and then comes back in and fixes some eggs and bacon, and then goes back in that office and plays guitar for a while, and then comes out and watches ESPN for about 5 hours, and somehow he puts food on the table. But it was a battle, like everybody. Everybody had their struggles with it, and I think we didn't need, as a team of people, we didn't need to have something like that to, I feel like, remind us to not take this, crazy gift that God gave us for granted. But I definitely think it reminded us of how lucky we are to get to do this for a living, and just like that, just like anybody, whether it was an athlete or somebody that had a job that was obviously affected. I mean, there were so many other people that were affected, their jobs and their lives were affected. And so I think it was just, how do you get through it and somewhat keep your sanity and keep your enthusiasm for what you do still as high as it ever was. And I feel like that we came out, as best as we possibly could.
I'll give her the best of me if you give her away. I love that line. Is that the line that came to you?
Yeah, I mean, I just remember sitting down and sort of picking at the guitar a little bit, and that sort of just fell out. And I'm not really a hooky kind of writer, so to speak, but I remember when that fell out, like I said, I ran into the bathroom, and my wife was in the bathtub, and you probably know, a woman's bathtub time is her time.
Yeah, you don't interrupt.
Yeah. You don't really want to interrupt that. But I was so excited about it. And I remember just kind of sitting down on the floor and playing her. And I think once she realized the significance of the message, she was, impressed and flattered and everything. But it wasn't until a couple months down the road when she kind of re-listened to it that I think it kind of hit her in the face a little bit and was like, wow, this is a powerful moment. But, as much as it's a song about her, I really wanted it to be a tribute to my father-in-law because, when we met, we didn't have a lick of money. We didn't, like I said, like my career was going nowhere. I just had a song bottom out at 47 or something. And so he would have been fully in his rights to say, hey, let's slow down the press there, buddy. I don't exactly know if you have the most potential of all of these guys out here trying to marry my daughter. I probably had the least, but he was, I think there's a little bit of him that's a romancer. And he was like, I can tell by the way you look at my daughter that you love her. Or like the lyric says in the song, I don't have any money and I don't even have a ring, but I'll figure it out. I don't exactly know the plan or how it's going to look, 14 years down the road, but I know one thing, that I love your daughter and I'm going to do the best I can to provide for her, and we'll figure it out along the way.
Wow. Best of Me. You're going to hear it in just a second. Go and check him out. DavidNail.com. He's everywhere on social media. Best of Me, the new EP, is out now. Well, you mentioned Sports Center. Are you still a Cardinals fan?
Believe it or not, as bad as this year has been, I am.
Because I saw you wearing a Twins hat in one video.
Yeah,
I was like, uh-oh.
Well, I have twins.
Well, so that's what I was wondering.
Every time somebody asks me why I'm wearing a Twins hat, I said, well, I have twins. That's why I'm wearing it. And I actually enjoy Minneapolis. And there's really only two teams in the big leagues that I couldn't wear, and that's the Cubs and the Yankees. They're sort of the Antichrist when it comes to our family. I was taught that very early in my childhood by my father. Been fortunate enough because of this music thing to go to a lot of places and get to go to a lot of parks and games and stuff. And so I try to always pick up something as sort of a memento of that moment and that memory. Minneapolis is kind of one of those sneaky towns where I feel like a lot of people don't really talk about it, but it's got a great music scene. There's a lot of music history there, and good sports town and some good restaurants. And I've spent quite a bit of time up there, and like I said, been fortunate enough to go to some games, so I can rip their hat with some pride.
And he has twins, so there you go.
Exactly. And I have twins.
Go and see him tomorrow night, Thursday night, Pub Station in Billings, Montana, thepubstation.com. Get your tickets. I don't know if he's playing, and I saw this in your set list. The Tom Petty cover, You Wreck Me.
Yeah. Look at you doing your research. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, I've never really done a whole lot of covers, and so I always sort of feel goofy doing covers. Like, I'll hear something, and I'm like, oh, man, I think I could pull that off. And then I try to do it, and I feel like such a goober. And I still feel a little bit of a goober doing the Tom Petty, but for whatever reason, I can get through it most nights without messing it up too much. And it's a fun song to sing.
Oh, it's a great song.
And I think people enjoy it, and it kind of fits what we do, I think, is a set. So, but, man, I appreciate you doing your research. I didn't even know there was a place you could look up my set list. But God bless whoever's doing that.
Look at that. Go to setlist.fm, I think is what it is. But go and check him out. You might hear it tomorrow night at the Pub Station. Well, let's hear it. Best of Me, David. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much. This has been a blast.
It's Best of Me. It's David Nail. It's KIX 96.5.